few months ago, I was going through old family photos, the kind where 20 people are crammed into one frame, half of them not even looking at the camera. Someone's uncle midlife, a kid crying in the corner. Messy, real, and he thought, when's the last time I was in a photo like that? Because I have thousands of photos. My phone tells me I have over 12,000, but almost none of them have more than 2 or 3 people in them. A lot of them don't have any people at all. That's when it hit me. We are, statistically, the most photographed, most documented, most connected generation that has ever lived. So why does almost nobody I know feel like they belong anywhere? Here's the contradiction nobody's really sitting with. We have more ways to reach another human being than any generation in history. Video call, text, DM, voice note, a dating app in every pocket. And yet, by almost every measure, we are lonelier than our grandparents ever were. Full access, zero connection. That's not a coincidence. And I don't think it's really about phones. Even though that's the easy villain everyone points to, I think something deeper shifted. And most of us haven't noticed it happening because it didn't happen to us. It happened around us, slowly. The way a room gets darker, so gradually, you don't realize you've been squinting for an hour. Let's start with the number that made me stop scrolling. The former US Surgeon General compared chronic loneliness to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Not emotionally similar, physically similar. Same cardiovascular risk, same impact on your immune system. So what does that actually mean? It means loneliness isn't just a sad feeling you push through. Your body treats disconnection as a threat. The same ancient alarm system that once told our ancestors you're alone, and alone means dead. That alarm hasn't updated its software in 200,000 years. It doesn't know the difference between being cast out of a tribe and just not having anyone to sit with at lunch. Now, here's the part that surprised me. It's not older people driving this crisis. Surveys show around 80% of Gen Z report feeling lonely in the past year, compared to less than half of baby boomers. Read that again. The generation that grew up without smartphones is doing better than the one that's never known life without them. So what does that mean? If loneliness were simply about how many people you can reach, Gen Z should be the least lonely generation ever. Not, which tells us the problem was never about access. It's about something access can't fix. Now, I want to be honest. This isn't as clean a story as phones bad. Real life good. I used to believe that too. And I think it's a little too easy because plenty of people have found real community online. Someone recovering from an illness who finds the only people who understand them in a Discord server. A teenager in a small conservative town who finds their first accepting community on Reddit before they ever find it at home. That's nothing. So the honest version is messier. Technology didn't kill connection. It changed what counts as connection. And a lot of us haven't figured out how to tell the difference anymore between talking to people and talking at an audience. There's a term researchers use, parasocial relationship. That feeling of closeness you get watching a YouTuber or a streamer for an hour a day. Someone who talks to a camera like they're talking to you, except they don't know you exist. Your brain, which again hasn't updated since the Stone Age, registers that as a real relationship. It gets some of the comfort, but none of the actual return. Nobody's showing up when you're in the hospital. Nobody notices when you go quiet for 2 weeks. So what does that mean? Practically, it means you can end a day having interacted with 500 people online and still feel like if you disappeared tomorrow, it would take a week for anyone to notice. Now, here's where I think the modern research is only catching up to something much older. Long before anyone had a word for social isolation, philosophers and religious traditions were already drawing a very sharp line between two things we now blur together: being alone and being lonely. The Stoics, Seneca, specifically wrote about solitude almost as a discipline, a place you go to think, not a punishment. Buddhist teaching goes even further, framing our craving for constant external validation, attention, approval, being seen as the actual root of suffering, not the cure for it. 2,500 years ago, someone sat under a tree and essentially diagnosed the Laikankament economy before electricity existed. I'm not saying ancient monks predicted Instagram. That would be a stretch, and honestly a little dishonest. But they were studying the same core human glitch we're rediscovering now. That chasing the feeling of being seen is not the same thing as actually being known. And once you notice that distinction, you can't really unsee it in your own life. Think about the difference between these two moments. 1, you post something, and 40 people like it within an hour. Genuine dopamine hit. Real in the moment. 2, one friend who you haven't spoken to in 3 months texts you out of nowhere just to ask how you're actually doing. Which one do you remember a week later? Almost everyone I've asked this says the second. Not because it was bigger, because it was specific. It requires someone to think of you individually without an algorithm nudging them to do it. That's the whole gap in one comparison. Volume versus specificity. We've optimized our lives for the first and quietly starved ourselves of the second. I don't think the answer here is delete social media, go touch grass. I've tried variations of that advice myself, and it always felt a bit like telling someone with a broken leg to just walk it off. Our phones aren't optional anymore. Work, money, even how we meet people runs through them now. That ship's not going back. Maybe the real question isn't how do we get less connected. Maybe it's when's the last time you let someone see you specifically? Not as content, not as a highlight, just as you are, unfiltered, with no caption. I don't have a clean answer to that. I'm honestly still working it out for myself. But I'd guess if you're watching this alone, at night, on a phone that has 12,000 photos, and none of them are messy, family photos, you already know exactly what I mean.